Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on Zero Trust data access and collaboration for remote workers, a new imperative for enterprises under COVID. Want to thank you all for joining us today and taking the time out to join us on this webinar. Just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. We'll keep everyone on mute during the webinar. Any questions, please do push them in via the chat button, and then we'll pick up and send Q&A round via email to everyone that's joined after the session. So the first job for me here today is to do introductions. So I'm Zachary Couldrick, Regional Managing Director for Exus, UK and Ireland. Exus is a business development organisation that helps innovative telecoms, software and digital companies go to market. I am personally a specialist in technology with more than a decade of experience delivering transformative tech solutions to corporate, carrier and enterprise clients in the UK and further afield. We also have on the call Philip Bliss, founder of the Edge Computing Association. Hi Phil, how are you?
I'm fine, hi everybody.
Phil will be bringing a discussion on how Edge is moving to all sectors of industry, IT, IoT and AI. Philip is a digital marketing pioneer and a technology entrepreneur who's been at the forefront of digital media development for the last 20 years. And then finally on the call, we have, or last but not least, Tom Ward, VP of Marketing at QNext FileFlex, a red herring top 100 global award winner. Hi Tom, how are you?
Hello everyone, how are you, Zach?
Yeah, good. So Tom is a 30-year veteran in technology, was one of the founding employees at ATI Technologies. He holds an MBA from the Schulich School of Business at York University. Extensive experience in large multinationals like NEC and Celestica, and then small entrepreneurial startups like ATI, MGI Software, and now QNext. He's senior marketing executive with extensive experience motivating and leading teams and successfully developing global distribution channels. Hope you like that introduction, Tom and Phil.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's me?
So I think we should kick off with why Zero Trust is relevant today. So according to Gartner, by 2022, 80% of new digital business applications open to ecosystem partners will be accessed through Zero Trust network access. And by 2023, 60% of all enterprises will be phasing out remote access or virtual private networks access in favor of Zero Trust network access. So that's a bit about what the relevance is of today's session, because we're focusing in not on Zero Trust as a whole, but in terms of the ability to do remote file share and remote access from internal to external. So perhaps before we go on to that, we should frame what is Zero Trust networking. I'm sure a lot of you on the call and the webinar will know this, but for those who don't, we wanted to explain it and why we should implement it, or why businesses and enterprises should look to implement Zero Trust network architecture. So network security today is all about perimeter security. So what that means is protection using antivirus software, firewall or port lockdowns, VPNs, stuff that we're all familiar with and that's been around for the last couple of decades. Users inside the perimeter are trusted. Where Zero Trust differs is it's not just perimeter security. It's about always authenticating and always verifying all transactions all the time and never trusting any individual or person with access. So an always verify model. So access to the data is secured and controlled through a Zero Trust policy engine. This eliminates unauthorized access to data and services, which is the why, of course, which makes the access control enforcement as granular as you need it to be, depending on the security of the data. So what are the benefits really of Zero Trust? So we see today a number news of breaches all the time, and even worse, companies being held to ransom for their own data. Some recent highly public attacks would be Tesco and Boots, who had data breaches on their loyalty card, customer data, and they're just some big name examples. The worst type of breach is a breach from a malicious insider, which is why perimeter-based defenses are just not enough. Zero Trust offers more with end-to-end encryption throughout. I'd like to give you an analogy. We're probably wondering why M&Ms, there's pictures of M&Ms on this slide. So I'd like to give you an analogy of using M&Ms to make it easy to understand. So if you consider crispy M&Ms, they're hard on the outside and soft on the center. Well, that's perimeter-based security. Hard to break in, but once you're in, you can more or less do what you want. Whereas peanut M&Ms are hard and crispy on the outside and also hard on the inside. So that's zero trust network architecture or zero trust security. It's difficult to get in, and then it's difficult once you're in to be able to do anything if you're not a trusted person or a trusted device or a trusted user. So what Zero Trust offers is more than a line of defense. It gives businesses and enterprises considerable value from regulatory compliance, professional compliance, security within the organization, and data protection, leveraging the edge, leveraging the edge computing framework. So at this point, I hand over, since I've mentioned edge computing, to Philip Bliss, and he can take you through a few different slides from his perspective. Over to you, Phil.
I just wanted to kind of thank everybody, thank Tom, thank Zach. Edge Computing Association has been around for about a year. It's, you know, I think really our initial focus has been over the pond, so to speak, in the North American side, where we have about 200,000 subscribers. Hopefully over the next 3 to 6 months, you'll be seeing a lot more of us in the UK as well. We've been building an international community-driven news and media platform, edgecomputingassociation.com. And those are the kind of things that you can expect to find in there. Some of them are there already, some of them are emerging, if you like. But the idea is really building a community. That's sort of where we're at with things. But I mean, I'm not here to talk about the Edge Computing Association, more to talk about, you know, where edge computing, and let's sort of work on the more the IT side of it. You know, the edge computing framework is becoming much more common for organizations. They want to push key data processing functions closer to the edge of their networks. You know, I think, I mean, obviously we throw up the arrival of 5G as a solution for everything, but it really is a good solution, and it really, the latency issues and things like that of edge are certainly going to be minimized as 5G rolls through. So shifting so many key tasks to the edge of the networks does create a number of new challenges for organizations. And Zach, you know, the M&M thing was classic. And, you know, the most critical of those challenges is security. And for those that I'm sure it's about everyone knows this, you know, end-to-end encryption facilitates the type of encrypted communication that only the sender and receiver can read and see. And if you look at our site in about a week's time, there'll be a founders podcast with a fellow called David Bruno, who's the CEO of Safe Swiss. And there's a lot about end-to-end encryption. He is an expert, and so sorry, Tom, I'm not trying to steal from you, but there's some really useful stuff coming in on that. So zero trust security architecture for edge applications can grow along with an edge network. And that's really, you know, so combining edge technology, the two cutting edge techniques, end-to-end encryption, really can offer a way to move data around successfully, more efficiently, but also to safeguard that data. And, you know, I don't want to get into the COVID thing because I think we're all in months 2 of it and tearing our hair out, basically. But with the arrival of it, you know, and not only pandemic contingency planning, but the resulting, you know, massive escalation of the remote workforce. security is now an even more vital priority. And I think we all deep down know that this massive rise in the remote workforce means that we're never going to go back to where we were. So we're going to have to manage these remote workers. And you know, some of them are gig workers, but many of them are not. You know, there's going to be fairly significant enterprise infrastructure, both physical and technology infrastructure, over the next little while. So the focus of today's webinar, and we kind of at Edge like to bring in webinars that are very topical, looks at an example of how to manage this accelerated change in the workforce and share data without endangering corporate security. So Tom, with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to you to talk about the technology of FileFlex, which brings, addresses those 2 points.
Okay, I'm going to take over the screen here. You guys can see the agenda screen there now?
Yep.
Okay, well, since we're going to talk about contingency planning, I thought it would be only appropriate to do so for my basement and my hoard of emergency supplies. Also, as you can see, my hair is getting a little bit long and shaggy. So my big decision before coming to the webinar today was, do I give in and allow my wife to cut my hair? And as you can see, I chose the latter. I didn't cut the hair first. I'll do that on the weekend. Do I come with shaggy hair or do I come with unevenly cut hair? I wasn't sure. But all joking aside, let me just switch my background over here to the same background as you guys.
You come back into the office, Tom.
That wasn't real.
Yeah.
At least they know we're social isolating now and we're not all in the same office.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm actually at home. So what I want to talk about is how to properly equip your workforce to work from home securely and without compromises, and especially given our current situation. So I'm going to do this under the context of 4 major inflections that are going on right now. And the first one is the rise of the distributed workforce. And when I say that, I mean that it's different from the remote workforce that we've had for decades now, where people work with a laptop computer from a hotel room or from home. A distributed workforce encompasses not just employees who are remote, but also contract workers and gig-based workers. And that's become the norm today. So you could have a gig-based worker working just on a special project, let's say website development, out of Vietnam, and you just pay them on a contract, on just for that one gig. And a lot of companies today are going more and more towards contract workers as well. So how do you give them the right tools without sacrificing your security? And so that's paramount today. So that's the first trend I'll go into. And the second trend is I'm going to talk about the emergence of hybrid IT. Organizations today now have a combination of both on-premises and cloud-hosted infrastructure. And that's pretty much the norm. And that presents problems for remote access and presents a lot of problems for your traditional perimeter-based security. And those first 2 trends have brought us now to what we see with zero trust. And that's really addressing the issues been brought up by your distributed workforce and hybrid IT, because now your perimeter, where is your perimeter when you start using these things? And so you have to have something which augments that perimeter, and that's what the zero trust policies are. And I'll get into that. And then the fourth is also related to points 1 and 2, is that now when you start using the tools to enable distributed workforce and hybrid IT, you have cloud hosted services, you have software as a service. What about your data governance? Because now part of that is in the hands of third parties. And how do you bring in compliance to GDPR, for example? So, we've been purchasing products to enable that distributed workforce, and now how do we bring that underneath our data governance and bring control over it? So this is all good. My presentation is going to all be in context of those 4 trends and how we address them with a product to enable your distributed workforce called FileFlex Enterprise. So it's a solution that I think you'll find is really cutting edge and sets the standard for today. So I'm going to do that, present our product in context of those trends and help you understand the trends. So first of all is a distributed workforce. And so it really is a virtualized workforce today. We've really seen it accelerated by pandemic contingency planning. But it was already emerging before, where we have not just remote employees, but we have contractors, we have gig-based workers. And, you know, the stats are 70% of the workforce now is working remotely at least once a week. And the result has been, for corporations and organizations that have been moving in this direction, has been about the stats say, a 13% employee performance increase. And typical businesses saves $11,000 per person per year. These are American stats. If they let people work from home virtually about 50% of the time. So it's significant. It's significant productivity increase, it's significant cost savings to the company, and it allows you to tap into a global workforce, not just local employees who can commute to your office. So it's been enabled by things like your mobile devices, your smartphones, your VPNs, software as a service, cloud storage, remote desktops, emails. And now, like I said, with the arrival of pandemic contingency planning, it's even accelerating, right? This trend that's already been there. So the problem is it introduces tools. These tools introduce significant issues with privacy and security. Number one is, you're not going to give a big gig-based worker access to your VPN. Like, you're not going to give somebody in Vietnam, for example, or India, VPN access to your company. You know, if they're on a gig, you're not going to do that, because that gives them access to the entire network infrastructure. Now, of course, you put controls around that and permissions, but then there's a lot of work, you know, working on that. You're just not going to do it. So, and then when you store your files with a third party, if you're using cloud providers, then that introduces compromises to the privacy of your information and the confidentiality of those files, because the third party has legal access to them. The law enforcement has legal access to it. Foreign powers, even under some circumstances, have access to it. It's all legalized, and it's in secret. You don't know that they're doing it. So if you have confidential files or files that need to be private, you know, the cloud's not an appropriate place to be storing them, and you shouldn't be using it. But we do it because of the productivity gains, and so we accept these compromises. And the next one is that when you use the cloud, you've got to upload files there, you've got to download them, you've got to manage all your file space there. You quickly run out of space, you'll find, and then you got to buy more space. You get cost creep, or you're swapping files back and forth. If you're dealing with and related to that, if you're dealing with big files like AutoCAD, you know, they can be huge. They can be a gig or 2 gigs, or Adobe files that are really big. Uploading them can take, you know, half an hour. So your employee, he's uploading his file, he has to just change one little letter, and he has to upload the whole thing, change the letter and upload the whole thing. And what happens is they go off, they have a coffee, they start talking to other employees. You get productivity hits from uploading and downloading files, especially with large files. So there's compromises. It's affecting your workforce. Now, before I go into the next trends, I want to just give you a quick elevator pitch or description of FileFlex Enterprise, so you understand what I'm talking about when I talk about our product. So it's the industry's first remote access sharing and collaboration platform for hybrid IT. And so essentially what it does is it provides that cloud functionality of remote access, sharing, file sharing, collaboration, but it applies that to your own storage. Excuse me, that could be your on-premises storage, your SharePoint storage, your cloud-hosted storage. And we support the entire hybrid IT infrastructure of on-premises, SharePoint, cloud-hosted storage. We employ a zero trust policy engine. I'm going to get into that. It's based upon that decentralized edge computing architecture. So we don't put things on a third-party server that's centralized or on a central server that's centralized. We use the storage and processing power of the edge devices. That's why we're here with you today, Phil. We use that edge computing architecture, and we get away from that centralized model. We bring IT control over the file sharing as well. And a last little thing here, I'll just put in there as one of the features is that we do allow for the creation of virtual data rooms. So you can share a data room with your colleagues or your clients or your partners or your suppliers, your vendors, and then they can upload files directly into the data room. It's all included with your user subscription. A user can have as many data rooms as they want. They can invite as many external parties into it as they want. The other people don't have to pay for it. It's all included in their subscription. It's a very low price, but it's not extra. And then each person in the data room can have controlled access. The user can set the permissions to allow them to be able to just view only, or they can download, or they can edit, you know, whatever, or they can upload into it if they need to. So with that quick description of our product, let me talk now about hybrid IT. And so when I say hybrid IT, this is a relatively new term in the industry. And what hybrid IT means is that it's a combination of on-premises and third-party cloud-hosted services, such as Amazon, Microsoft Azure, Google Clouds, things like that. And this model has really been the norm. It's the norm today. Almost everybody's using it. I think 90% of companies are now using cloud-hosted services in some fashion or another. And 60% of your workloads are running in a cloud-hosted service. It's been driven by understaffing of IT because it's so easy to use. You can spin up a server like in 5 minutes. You can have a new VM or a server running. You just go onto your console and spin it up. Versus in the old days, you had to go to your server room and you had to take a server and put it on the rack and install the OS and put all your security measures in place and connect all the cables and everything else. And it could take half a day or a day of skilled labor to get the server up and running. Now it's in 5 minutes. It's very easy. And with reductions in force and understaffing, it just makes it easy for IT to do these things. So the great thing about the infrastructure services like Amazon is they have great tools for IT. And it's fantastic for IT, but it's poor for the end user. The end user has terrible tools. The only thing I can really see is that if they're going to access that storage, you have to build a virtual private cloud and put it on your infrastructure and allow them to access it that way. So the other thing is it silos the information. It's not well integrated into the rest of your company. So what FileFlex does is addresses that siloing of information and the tools for end user, because it, through a single pane of glass, provides secure remote data access and sharing of that cloud-hosted storage or that on-premises storage, and brings it all together under one dashboard. You can move it from a PC to the cloud, or you can move it from a server to the cloud, or you can move it from Amazon to Azure, or whatever you want. You can share from all of them. It's all right from the same dashboard. It's extremely easy. It makes it all part of your company infrastructure from FileFlex and integrates it all together. So moving from that, these bring together the issues I was talking about before, where if you have distributed workforce and if you're using cloud-hosted services, now where is your perimeter? And who's controlling the perimeter? And so this is where zero trust comes in, because the network architecture has been changing. More services have moved to the cloud. There's been a surge in software as a service, user embracing flexible working from multiple devices, variety of locations. So the network perimeter has been disappearing. And with it, so has been lessening the value of your traditional defenses. So in a zero trust architecture, that inherent trust is removed from the network. And just because you're connected to the network doesn't mean that you should be able to access everything that's on that network. And that's how breaches happen. An adversary gets, he does a phishing attack. He gets somebody's credentials. They get into your network using those credentials. And then once they're inside, they just move laterally through the company until they find the really important stuff, like maybe your servers, and they install ransomware on your servers, and you're locked out. And that happens because you don't have a zero trust architecture. Once they're inside, they're trusted. Only people outside are treated as hostile. So your traditional perimeter-based security, like antivirus software, port firewall lockdown, VPNs, users inside are trusted. But with zero trust, you always authenticate, always verify all transactions all the time. Okay, and you eliminate unauthorized access through the zero trust engine. So here's what I got from the National Cybersecurity Center off of their zero trust policy paper, the alpha release. They just put it out last month. Okay, so they say zero trust is achieved by building trust into the user's identity through user authentication, through their devices, through device verification, and through their service access that they access through service authorization. Okay, and so for it to be effective, each connection to a service should be authenticated, and the device in the connection should be authorized against a policy, regardless of where the connection came from, whether it was internal or whether it was external. You don't just verify the external requests, you verify all the requests, okay? That's off their new paper. It's a very good paper, good read if you get a chance to read it. So what we do is we bring in that zero trust architecture by design from the ground floor. VPN, on the other hand, if you're using a VPN, they trust blindly. Once you use a VPN, once you're authenticated, they get access to everything on the network. But what we do is we abstract the infrastructure from the information. So that protects against unauthorized access. It provides access as granular as a single file, and the user doesn't know where that's stored. They only have access to that file that you shared and nothing else, or that data room and nothing else, or that directory and nothing else, or that drive and nothing else, okay? So the access and authentication is performed before the connection is established. And you know, competitive solutions like a, sorry, I get my mouse here, like a cloud would either give access to the infrastructure like a VPN, or they give access to another server, and everything's put on a third-party server, which is not necessarily under your control. So, okay, so think of FileFlex like a bank teller. If you want to withdraw money from the bank, you're not allowed to go into the vault and get it yourself, right? You go to the bank teller. The bank teller checks and makes sure that you are who you say you are. It goes into the teller goes into your account and says, do you have enough money to take that out? Yes or no. Is it over your withdrawal limits? Yes or no. So they check the policies, they check the amount there, they check you, and they verify everything first. Well, that's what FileFlex is like. We have a zero trust policy engine that looks through the user, checks that you are who you say you are, looks through the device, does a policy verification, and then we get the files for you. The connector goes and gets the files for you and gives you the files. You don't allow it in directly in. And that's all done through anonymous token exchange with point-to-point encryption, and it's almost all instant for you. So that's what we mean when we say a zero trust policy engine. And that's all done through a number of processes. We have a set of secure processes for access and securing and transmitting data. That includes user authentication, secure data transmission, accessing information, protecting credentials, the use of anonymous tokens, request management, permission management processes. They all work together for that policy engine. And then we have a robust security set that would work together with all your own security sets that you already have put in place, such as two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, device authentication, virus scanning, your single sign-on. It's all done with AES 256 encrypted hybrid point-to-point communications. It all has an activity log for incident management. You integrate right into your incident management software. So it's all integrated to what you're already doing today. Makes it very easy for your governance, which I'll get into in a minute. And then we bring that together with the edge computing architecture. So we have on-premises data storage. We use the processes and the processor and the storage of the edge devices, not necessarily a central location. And it's all done through a very secure patented technology with a PKI server, a connector agent, and they all work together to bring the security to the remote access, sharing, and collaboration of your company. So, and then also I'm going to mention here that we have a technology partnership with Intel, and particularly with their Silver Lake. We're on their processors today with securing your encryption keys through the SGX enclaves. It's an option if you want to employ it, but we're also going to be the first mover on their Silver Lake SGX security coming out with their next generation of server chips, which allow you to secure through the SGX enclaves, even through a VM. That's what they're going to be doing. So here's a quote from them about us. They said, software is no longer enough to combat today's cyber threats. A hardware enhanced solution based on Intel architecture is the way forward. And now with Intel Silver Lake SGX technology and FileFlex Enterprise, organizations have a secure remote access sharing and collaboration in a silicon to silicon secured by hardware solution of documents from all source locations. And that's the critical piece in the solution path to more secure enterprise. So that's another layer of security that we bring to you. Now, as I said before, you know, when you get into distributed workforce and you get into third parties and software as a service and you get into everything that I've been talking about here, it becomes more and more important for data governance. And governments have been trying to pass regulations or passing regulations to try and bring that governance back under control with GDPR and things like that. So we've seen a rise in privacy regulations and standards. Good governance would integrate into your existing tools, such as single sign-on, your two-factor authentication, your device authentication, your password policies, your fingerprinting policies, your Active Directory, your LDAP, and things like that. And it would also have control over your user management. So with FileFlex, we allow you to add and delete your users, set your permissions, access the access control list, add storage repositories. Is all integrated with your AD and your LDAP permissions, okay? Your storage management, you want to be able to assign storage to users on a device, drive, folder, even a file level granularity. Your sharing permissions management, IT has complete control over sharing permissions. They can say, hey, this repository or this folder or this drive can't be shared with anyone, okay? You can remotely access it. The people we allow to can remotely access and get in there and see it, but they can't share it. Or they can say they can share it, but when they share it, it has to be view-only mode. Downloading is not permitted. The external parties can't download anything. It keeps those files under control, right? Or they can say, no, you can share it, you can download it, the recipient can download it, they can even edit it if they want to. So those are the kind of things we bring in with the sharing permissions management, which can be controlled by either the user or by IT. And then you get the file sharing management, so you can determine who you can share with outside the company, who can add their own storage options and things like that. And you get integration into your incident management, where all activities are logged, and you can filter them by user date or downloads, and you can export them, or you can integrate them into your incident management software. And then lastly, I want to say here that our product, FileFlex Enterprise, you don't have to buy any new hardware. It's a software-only solution. It runs in a VM, so you don't have to buy a new server. You can run it from an existing server. It's very light. You can even run it from a NAS if you wanted to. You don't have to be going and buying additional storage. You leverage the existing storage that you already own. It's all integrated into the storage of your company. The way that your IT decides how it's integrated and what's available to the users. It's very simple and easy to manage and deploy. You can have it up and running in really just a couple of hours. It's easy to scale in a very cost-efficient manner. It's easy to use. There's no extensive training requirements. There's no upfront dollars. There's a low monthly fee per user. There's no cost creep. You don't get billed later for more bandwidth or for more storage. The low fee, we don't have to build an expensive data center, so we don't have high costs, so you don't have high costs. And it's using all the very latest in technologies. And we are a technology partner with Intel, as I mentioned. We also a technology partner with Microsoft and with HPE, I should say. And I think it sets a new standard, and we're addressing those trends I mentioned earlier about the distributed workforce and a very modern workforce of today with the most modern tools, the zero trust policy engine and how your network perimeter has been disappearing and addressing that issue, your data governance issue, and your hybrid IT that you have today. So with that, I gave you a very, very fast overview to these issues and how they're addressed through our product line. I'm going to hand it back to you, Zach, I guess. And for more information, I think you're going to get a hold of you, right, Zach? If anybody wants more information.
Yeah, anyone in the UK who would like to get a demo of the platform or any more information or commercials or anything like that, please do reach out to me. My details, find me on LinkedIn, Zachary Caldrick, and of course we'll share these slides round after. Just want to thank you, Tom, for presenting. It was really good, really interesting, and I think the content's bang on with the change that we're currently experiencing with the pandemic, but more generally in society. And thanks, Phil, for framing the call a bit and adding your insights from the Edge Computing Association.
Thank you, Zach, for hosting.
And thanks all the attendees for joining us today. And I wish you all a happy evening on Thursday, and look forward to seeing you again on something like this soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Zach.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.